It's no secret that men today really struggle to understand women. Men have been dealing with this for thousands of years. But most men in the past had the advantage of hearing the stories of the men who came before them and understanding from them what they were getting into. My father and grandfather did not tell me about women at all. So I, like most of you, had to learn it the hard way. I wish somebody had told me while I was in school that I could have picked up a lot of these lessons if I had just been paying attention in mythology and literature class, because men from thousands of years ago have been trying to communicate with us about the dangers and the behaviors of women to keep us from suffering the same consequences that they suffered. Yes, today's women have new technologies and maybe some updated techniques, but for the most part, their behaviors are exactly the same as a woman that lived 1,000 or 5,000 years ago. So today, I want to talk to you about one particular archetype that we should have understood, because this is probably the most manipulative and most dangerous archetype that we face today. For those of you who don't know what an archetype is a representation of a cluster of behaviors that are strongly associated together and can be represented through literature and mythology in character form. The archetype I'm talking about today is the damsel in distress. This manipulative archetype exists today in spades, and she will take you for all you're worth. There are many different types of archetypes. There's the hero and the maiden. There's the king and the queen, the lover, the vixen, kind of the femme fatale. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about the damsel in distress, because she's the one that I think catches most guys off guard, because this can be a manipulation that occurs at many different levels. It can be a very subtle manipulation, or it can be extremely severe. It can be as part of a personality disorder like narcissism or borderline, or it can just be an innocent flirtation. Nevertheless, every man needs to understand exactly what the damsel in distress is, how to recognize her, and to identify this manipulation early on before you get sucked into her world. Because if you get sucked into the world of the damsel, you're lost. You're going to suffer a great, great deal, much more than you ever intended. See, what the damsel does is she preys on a man's honor and his need to be useful and purposeful in the world. We're also protectors. So these characteristics that come naturally to men make us the perfect victims for the damsel. The damsel will use some crisis to capture our attention, and she'll pull on our natural masculine energy to try to help her or save her or resolve her problem, whatever it might be. Now, this could be something as simple as like back in the old days where a woman would drop her handkerchief and the innocent, the gentleman would come and hand it back to her as if she was incapable of bending over to pick up her handkerchief. I guess back in those days they wore those dresses with all those hoops in them, so maybe bending over was something they couldn't do. But in any event, that's a very innocent, subtle version of the damsel asking for the man's help, and really it's just a flirtation is all it really is. And so innocent enough, I don't think you need to worry too much about that kind of approach. Help me get into my car, I lock my keys in the car. That kind of a situation kind of falls in line with the dropped handkerchief. It could be an innocent flirtation, it could just be a way to get your attention, not something to be worried about. Let's talk about the next level up. I had a girlfriend in the 7th grade. Her name was Allison. I won't give you her last name for obvious reasons, but Allison lived about a mile from me. And she was in my class. And she and I had been kind of, as much as boyfriend-girlfriend thing in the 7th grade could be back then, holding hands and occasionally kissing. Anyway, one day we had a snowstorm. Back when I was a kid, we got snowstorms all the time. And I think we had enough snow to close school that day, like 6 or 7 inches of snow. And so she's at home alone in her house, and I'm essentially at home alone in my house. And we're talking on the phone, and she starts saying, "Oh, I hear something. There's someone trying to get into my house. John, you've got to come here right away. There's someone trying to break in." So, she's a mile away. There's at least 6 or 7 inches of snow on the ground. I cannot ride my bike. So I get my little pocket knife and stick it in my pocket, and I start running to her house in this snowstorm. Yeah, I was an idiot. Yeah, I can clearly see that now. It was all a ruse just to get me to come over there, just to get me to change my plans, for sitting around watching TV, daytime television all day and chowing down on whatever snacks I could find. To go over to her house through the ice cold weather and the snow to be with her. There was no one there, obviously. It was just a manipulation that she used to control my behavior, and I fell for it 100%. Women will do this to you all the time. Now, how you know you're getting in deeper than you want to go will be dependent on the level of crisis. So, a common scheme on dating apps these days, especially for women in other countries, is they're going to tell you super sad stories about people in their family that are suffering. My mother needs an operation. It's going to cost, I don't know, $500. $500 US here in, my backwoods end of the world is like $1 million. If you could just send me $500, we could take care of this operation and she would be well and all would be fine. Well, you got to really be cautious about that sort of thing because there's rampant fraud, especially in online dating. And this is more than likely some kind of a ruse. But it works. That's the reason why they do it, is because guys fall for it all the time. If guys weren't falling for it, they would come up with something better. But men will offer that $500 just to keep the conversation going. The next level up is they're having a personal disaster themselves. You're face to face with them. They're a friend, they're on your fringe, whatever, and you learn about, through some mysterious means, that she's having a huge crisis in her life and she needs help. And you think that you can help her, and so you get involved, and she sucks you into her world, and she's going to drain your finances. She's going to resolve whatever problem that she has, and she's going to leave you as soon as this problem is resolved. It could be a completely legit problem, but you acting as her savior is not guaranteeing or even making it more likely that you're going to be her romantic interest once this problem is resolved. So you got to be really cautious about getting in there and creating a relationship with any expectation that there's going to be anything more than just some kind of an association / friendship that comes out of it, because that's almost always the case. Now, there is a percentage of men who are much more likely to get sucked into this. And I like to think of them as the white knights. These are the guys who are out there looking for opportunities to create a relationship based on their ability to help someone get out of a problem. And this white knight mentality is probably the result of some psychological trauma they suffered when they were kids. Their parents were fighting all the time, or they were witnesses to something terrible. And so they want to help. They just have it drilled into them that they just want to help. And they don't realize that this desire to help is not some altruistic, benevolent behavior that they are exhibiting. It is a reaction to some trauma that they had from their past. If you find yourself in this situation where you are becoming the white knight, there's a really good chance that it has something to do with your past, your childhood in particular, where there was something that you as a child needed to address and you just didn't have the ability to address it. It's lodged into your subconscious mind, and you're going to need to get it sorted out, because you will just continue to repeat this behavior over and over and over again, creating relationships where you are the helper. You're the one coming in trying to solve the problem. You're the one who is the white knight, and the damsel in distress will manipulate you and manipulate you and manipulate you until there is nothing left for her to gain. And once she has reached that point where she has drained you of whatever resources that she felt she could get from you, she will dump you. Now, the damsel sometimes is really just a femme fatale. She's really just a manipulative, mean-spirited, dark human being. Other times, the damsel truly is just an innocent girl with her own trauma who is acting out this behavior because she's got some issues to work out. Either way, this situation always ends badly, always. Even if it moves on to marriage, you get into some serious relationship with her, you're going to get dumped. You're no longer going to be able to resolve her problems. She's going to repeat this pattern where she just has one problem after another, after another, after another, until you just become exhausted with her. Or she, again, like I said earlier, will just drain your resources until everything is gone, and then she's going to let you go. So be really conscious and aware of this archetype, this damsel in distress. She can be, I should say, a very, very dangerous person. And it could be that she has some very deep psychiatric issues that are just unresolved. And if you yourself are the white knight and you see yourself behaving in these ways repetitively in your life, probably you need to get some therapy too, because that behavior is definitely not going to serve you well, because you're going to find that you're constantly pulled around by your conscience. You're constantly being placed in positions where you have to make an ethical decision, and what seems like an ethical decision to help another human being. And the natural action is to reach out and help, but not knowing that you're just setting yourself up into a trap. You're just walking into the trap. And it's a very, very difficult thing to avoid if you've got that, especially if you've got that whole white knight syndrome going, because it's just, the trap was made for you. It was just made for you. And if you fall into it, God bless you, because you're going to suffer a lot. Okay, so we've talked about the extremes. We've talked about the handkerchief droppers, and we've talked about the trap setters. The trap setters are the ones that are looking for those white knights and trying to drag you into some major crisis. You know, it's life or death kind of thing. Those are the ones that are really trying to pull you in, and they're desperate to get you until they get you. Well, in the middle, there's a wide range of behaviors of the damsel in distress. And this behavior, from like the handkerchief droppers to even somewhere in the middle, happens a lot, where women will use some level of crisis to try to manipulate you to do something for them. Now, sometimes it's on the innocent side, like, you know, she needs someone to move a couch, whatever, you know. But sometimes it's a little bit more on the trapper side, where she needs you to drive her to her grandfather's house hundreds of miles away, and you're going to be spending a lot of time with her. And she's, you know, concocted this amazing story about, you know, the past with his grandfather and his illness, and whatever the situation is, you're going to hear this amazing story that goes with this tragedy that's going on in her life. And she's manipulating you, and it's getting on the dark side. When she starts asking you for resources, time, money, attention, you need to just start increasing your awareness, put your radar up, and just know that this may be heading toward that femme fatale kind of situation where she's setting the trap, and her intention is to use you and lose you in a relatively short period of time. So be super, super cautious. I know these stories well because I'm very well acquainted with the damsel. From my 7th grade girlfriend, Allison, who dragged me in the snow to her house, to my high school crush, who was the homecoming princess who shared all of her darkest secrets with me about how badly her boyfriends were treating her, all the way up until even this day, where my ex-wife is trying to manipulate me into some kind of relationship with her by telling me I'm the only one who can help her with her issues, whatever they are, financial, psychological, physical, the whole 9 yards. So when I tell you that the damsel in distress is a con, trust me, it's a con. It's a convincing con, and it's one that pulls on the core of our very nature. And that's what makes it so dangerous to men. The damsel will always find a way to get in your head. She'll always find a way to get you to believe that you're the only one who can solve her problem. Be wary, my friends. Do not fall for it. The white knight relationship model is unsustainable on either side, even when all the intentions are good and the person who is the damsel in distress is truly a damsel in distress. The problem with this relationship is that there's a manipulation occurring under the current almost all the time, where each is not being completely straightforward or honest with what their true desires are for this relationship that has, manifested as a result of this issue, whatever this issue may be. There is a codependency that can be created very quickly, and that codependency can lead to anger and resentment and a lot of other really negative outcomes. So if you find yourself in a relationship with a damsel, ask yourself, are you being the white knight? What do you want from this relationship? If you're truly altruistic about this relationship, then you want nothing from it. You're just there to help and walk away. That's your role. But if you have romantic interests and you're being this helper, there's a very good chance that you yourself are becoming the manipulator, not just the manipulated. So these relationships are way more complicated than anyone would guess, but they happen so frequently. It's the kind of thing that guys just fall into naturally without realizing just how treacherous and complex this trap can be. So I strongly recommend that if you find yourself in a relationship like this, where you are the white knight, or even if you think you're being the victim, I don't know if there's any women watching this, or even some men can certainly be the damsel in distress. It's not necessarily a gender thing. It just happens to be that most of the time it's a woman. Really question what are your motives regarding the relationship. The only time that it's wise to start a relationship is when both people are at the top of their game. Just as a general word of advice, you do not want to get into a relationship with anyone who is in the midst of some kind of a struggle or trying to find themselves or figure themselves out. When you come across people at this point in their lives, even though they may not be coming on to you like a damsel, they really are the damsel. They're looking for you to straighten them out, to give them enlightenment, to help them figure out their thoughts, their ideas, their emotions, their beliefs, their goals, whatever it may be. It can be so subtle you won't even recognize it when it happens to you. But the damsel will always lead to this white knight behavior, which ends up causing this dysfunctional relationship that will inevitably implode. It's just a matter of time. And I think that a lot of the marriages that we see probably, that are failing or have failed already, probably started off as some kind of damsel and white knight relationship. So be very, very careful. This is a toxic relationship. It's not always the woman, it's not always the damsel that is causing the toxicity in this relationship. Oftentimes the white knight, with his compulsive need to help, but then is hiding really this underlying need that he has to have this relationship and to be this role in this woman's life. It's unhealthy. So don't let it happen to you. This is the kind of thing that can absolutely blow up your whole life. All right, you guys, that's all I got for you today. I certainly hope this video has been enjoyable, instructional, educational, something. If it has, please let me know in the comments. I'd like to hear what you guys think. Please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I will advise you to stay healthy, and if you can, stay single.